Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a roll call.
Gary Cunningham.
Here.
Sean Keir.
Here.
Steve Griffiths.
Here.
Miles Schlesinger.
Here.
Marie McFarland.
Here.
Patty Crone.
Here. Okay, any agenda changes or revisions?
None by staff.
Okay. We have the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 19th. I trust everyone has had an opportunity to review them. Do I have a motion
to accept the minutes from the March 19th meeting?
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, minutes are approved. Any final orders, resolutions, or written communications?
Not this evening, no.
Okay. We have no public hearings or deliberations. So we're on to our old business, the food carts and trucks. This is our work study that we initiated at our last meeting, and we are continuing it. Thank you, Lindsay, for providing us with a draft outline for the regulation code. So I'll turn this to you.
Yeah, so we provided in your materials this evening, I tried to diffuse all of the information that I received and heard over the last meeting in regards to food trucks and carts, and started to just draft a general zone outline for what we would put in the, I believe it's the special uses and provisions chapter that Mr. Appicello and I were considering. So as you can see, there's some items blank. I have general requirements, application requirements, performance standards, operational requirements, as well as the criteria for approval, and then also some revocation if people are not following the rules after getting a permit. So I'd like to start with the general requirements and just go through some of the 1 through 6 and talk about and discuss some of the impacts of some of these items and make sure that the language that's drafted is kind of the direction we want to go.
Okay. And I'm sorry. I'm going to take a little time out here.
Yeah?
I apologize because
Oh,
we
I should
haven't
have done
introduced
I know, sorry.
our newest planning department staff members. So would you like to do that?
Yes, so tonight we have with us on her second day here, Anne Marie Skinner. She is our new senior planner. You can find her in Deb's old office in the community development area of City Hall. And Anne Marie comes from us from the suburbs of Portland. And if you'd like to give a little background and why you chose Lincoln City, I'd like to hear.
Okay, wonderful. First off, I just want to say that I'm very excited to be here. This has been a dream of mine, so it has been realized, and I'm very happy.
Great.
Originally, I come from Idaho, and my original planning experience was in Idaho. I worked as a senior planner for a small city, Caldwell, Idaho, and also worked in the private sector for my dad. He's a licensed land surveyor. He had his own business. So I did all of his planning, and then I moved to Oregon because I always wanted to leave Idaho. And my first planning job in Oregon was with Washington County. I was a planner for them. And then from there, I was approached by a private firm twice. So I worked for Marriott Design as their planner, and then PBS Engineering as their planner. And now I am here.
Does Idaho have land use planning as detailed as the state of Oregon?
No, not even close.
Well, we're glad you're here too. Thank you, Henry.
Okay, I'm sorry, you can go on there.
No, I should apologize. I should have amended the agenda. Okay, so, I don't have zoning map, but I do have our GIS map up. So we do have our GIS map up today to talk about distances from the location of beach accesses, which is something that you guys discussed quite a few times at our last meeting. But until then, I would like to just go through the general requirements and make sure we're aiming in the right direction before we put this out for public comment and public hearing. So we have food trucks allowed in commercial zones, which is our general commercial, recreational commercial, Ocean Lake. I'm gonna fail on the Ocean Lake
Main Street Highway.
Main Street Highway.
Okay, the OPD is,
Ocean Lake Plan District, sorry.
okay, Ocean Lake Plan District, Main Street Highway, Taft Village Core, Nelscott,
Land District.
Commercial something.
Yeah, in the Nelscott Plan District, it's the Nelscott Business District section.
Okay. And then professional campus and professional institution. I did put on there because of the discussion of hospitals, schools, and some of those other aspects. I did not hear that there was a desire to limit the number of days of operation, that we kind of wanted to let the market decide whether someone wanted to be out there in the midst of November. I put the requirement that food trucks and carts must utilize biodegradable packaging, that no plastic products are allowed to be served or provided to the general public. I did add that second sentence in there out of my own thought process, because utilization of plastic through cooking processes, we don't want to not allow some, but it was, I understood you guys' intention is not utilizing it as a service to potentially pollute the area.
Right.
And stop me if you guys want to talk about any specific one of these, or I can go through 1 through 6, and then we can just kind of talk about them all together. The fourth is food truck cart permits require an annual review to ensure compliance with regulations of the chapter in effect at time. This would give us an opportunity, if we found an issue or needed to make some adjustments at the next review period, they would have to come into compliance with that. It is my understanding that each year the health department also renews your license, and so ensuring that the city is not permitting food carts or trucks that have an invalid health department license. Now, there's some blank spots on this one. I was unsure when we wanted to require or submittal of those annual review applications. Either at the first working day of a month each year, last working day of a month each year, and just general time frame. I did put a subnote at that any expired permit must cease operation until renewal is approved. And that is a lesson I learned from my past experience with managing food trucks and carts in lovely Gig Harbor, Washington. Food truck cart permits are non-transferable to any person or entity of any kind. So if a truck is purchased or sold to someone else, they would have to get their own health department licensing approval. And so that was the intent behind me adding this one. I know that we didn't discuss it at the last meeting, but it was going through those health requirements and state requirements, and I thought that was a good rule.
Does the health department requirement, is that an umbrella that also includes the food handler certificates?
Well, those are based upon your staff who you hire, but when you hire someone, you typically have, I'm not.
They're required to have their food handler's license on them while on premises.
Yeah.
So if they do not, they will be escorted off the property.
Okay, so that would be our enforcement.
That would,
No, that would be
the owners or the operators, because it's their liability, yeah.
It's the manager's duty to make sure they have them, they've passed it, and carry it while on the job.
Okay,
It's the health department's duty to enforce that.
okay.
That will have nothing to do with us.
But they may not check them? How often does the health department check?
I'm not sure how that goes.
Twice a year?
They just stop by sometime for inspections, so they don't have a set visit. They want to do a surprise to see how the state of the kitchen and.
They usually set up an inspection of the place before the first license is issued, but then it's my understanding that they come twice a year at least.
Perhaps.
And if they have more problems, they'll come more often.
If they receive complaints, they'll show up tomorrow. So
I serve
there
in
is
the
that.
community meal program at St. James Church, and they come without notice and probably twice a year.
Okay.
During when we're in
They
operation.
should never have notice.
And that it's my experience from another prior past life that the owners of the restaurant, or in this case food truck or carts, are also required to have a copy of a valid food handler's permit for all staff that are still employed there.
Okay.
Yes.
So that would be some food handler's permits, as well as the health department approval for the business to serve food would be under that umbrella.
Okay, thank you.
And then this was the one that I wasn't sure where we were at on this yet, but we talked about, and I'm glad that Mr. Apicella is here, but number 6, food trucks must be located on private property. And we did talk about making sure that those conform with the site plan review, that they're parking on hard surface, that there's ADA compatibility or maneuverability, that they're, not too close to each other for fire and health, other safety needs.
Okay.
Anything that you guys want to bring up or discuss in regards to the general requirements at this time?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Okay. When we were talking about private property, we also talked about the possibility of public, and one of the questions I asked at the time was, do you have any public lots that could be potentially used to set this up?
In regards to that, I think they would have to be, I don't know that the city would want to go into a private entity of managing or operating or going through a site plan approval. I would say that if the city owns it publicly now, but were to sell them onto the private market, that is a potential, but anything developed by the city at this point in time, I do not believe so. We know that the park zones are not allowed after the work that was done. We have been in discussion, and there's not a desire, from my understanding, to utilize public right-of-way.
It's still okay if somebody has a food truck and is doing a catering at the end of a cul-de-sac. They're parked on the street, which is public, but they're going back and.
Assuming that the property owner has gotten a special event permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned one example in our discussion 2 weeks ago of perhaps utilizing a public parking lot that's not being used by the public very much. For example, perhaps one in east of 101 in Taft area, those parking lots aren't used very often. But that was an example that was thrown out 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
And that is something that I can look into with the urban renewal, I believe, owns those parking lots. And so I would need to coordinate with them to see if that's something they would be interested in. Now, if the city owns private property that is in one of these zones, that is either GC or, one of these commercial districts, there is the potential that could go through the site plan and have food carts or trucks or a pod development on it.
The question we got from Explore Lincoln City was, hey, what about food trucks at special events? Special events can occur on private property, but they can also occur on city property. City property typically has, when we think about most city property has a parks designation, community center, others. I don't know what this building has, but So the commercial zones would probably be covered like if this building was being used for a food truck, but I think that we may want to consider adding parks zones as permitted, because there are going to be special events, and the special events are going to want to use food trucks. Now, the code already says, we just amended the park zone, that parks are allowed to have vendors under a special event permit, and it doesn't really specify that a vendor excludes food trucks, but I wouldn't want somebody to argue that. So if we're going to say food trucks are allowed in these zones, we might want to say in a park zone, provided it's through a special event permit or through and I think the Parks Director wasn't interested in having food trucks at like baseball games and things like that. I think she was like, that can be a food cart, but we don't want, trucks in our parking lot selling stuff during those games. But I think carts are under the food cart ordinance really better. So just that 2 cents, the park zone might be something we want to look at.
But any special event could apply for a permit to have a food truck there. So,
Well,
for example, the 10K run or whatever it was, they could have had food trucks.
Well, I think what's pushing this is that right now Moe's has a food truck, and they sometimes want to bring it to special events in the city, and the question is, well, is that something they are allowed to do or not? Well, the prohibition in the code is that all businesses must operate from a enclosed building. And the exceptions do not include food trucks, nor do they include food carts or vendors at special events or approved concessions. So I actually wrote an ordinance about 20 minutes ago to clean that up. So we can actually say that if you're in a park pursuant to an approved concession agreement and you don't have an enclosed building, you can still operate and not violate the OTP ordinance, which is where that provision is.
Okay. Something we didn't discuss last time, and I don't know if we have to put it in here explicitly or not, is any sale of alcohol.
I don't believe that it's allowed under the Oregon state law for food trucks and
Okay,
food carts.
that's what I'm curious.
That would need to be,
That's where the little tiny shack with the bathroom, sell booze out of that. That's how they do it in Portland.
You know, in Portland, when you go to these large food truck areas, a lot of places you'll have one main area that has the restrooms in it for everybody to use, and in there you can buy beer.
There was actually a bathroom.
how convenient.
I think there was a
There is also
You don't have to go anywhere.
a local restaurant that's down on the way to Taft that isn't open right now, but it says that
The Rusty Wheel?
No, it's in Nelscott, I think, up on the hill. Is that the
No,
one?
it's coming down
It's
from
coming down.
they have a rusty truck out in front of it, I think. And they have, I talked to her in planning an event which wasn't allowed. But in planning it, she would set up a beer wine garden for a reception at the Regatta Park. And she said that they had a truck that was equipped to do that.
Well, I vote for having no alcohol in any food carts.
But would you say that if someone wants to have a wedding reception,
On their own private property, that's fine.
what if they rent the Regatta Park?
Well,
Or-
That's a state
That's a
license
state
they're going to
thing.
have to get from the
Yeah.
state park.
Special event.
Yeah, and that's a whole
That's
other
a-
ball of wax.
No.
None of our business.
Okay, never mind.
So that would be a special event, that would fall under the special event and the liability insurance that whoever was getting married would have to
And
cover
they
and
have
stuff.
to check all that
Yeah,
out.
yeah. That wouldn't be under the land use regulations at this time.
Okay.
Um, Okay, so do we want to move to the complete application requirements?
Are there any other questions?
I have one
Yes,
more question.
Ed.
Is this a place where we would have a distance from parking or beach access?
So I actually placed that under performance standards and operational requirements
It's on the next page.
on page 2, yeah.
Two under, yeah.
Well, if they have page numbers.
Page 9.
Minimum of 5 feet away.
Okay, any other questions under general requirements?
I do have a question.
Richard?
Just that, we currently have an ordinance, the food cart ordinance, and it's not a very detailed ordinance. It has just a few things in it. But it is not a land use ordinance. It is chapter 528, which is just a business regulation type ordinance. We also have another business regulation type ordinance called the vacation rental license ordinance. So we license food carts and we license vacation rentals, and both of those licenses are administered through the planning department. So there's a little bit of kind of apples and oranges here where we're talking about mostly license kind of issues, where the other part of this, the Title 17 part of this is, if you were to say you want to allow as a permitted use in a certain commercial zone, a pod for food carts, what are the infrastructure and other requirements necessary for that development? So you have two things going on here. And when Lindsay sent me her, actually gave me the hard copy to look at, I didn't have any problem with what she wrote there, but I do think that we're kind of at least a little bit meshing those two ideas. And I think we may want to, there's nothing wrong with what we've done, it's just I think we may want to think about, okay, if we're going to just put on the planner hat and draw a site plan for a commercial property in the city, what physical improvements are we talking about for that development of that pod versus the day-to-day operations of a food cart? Because I think we're really looking at kind of two ordinances here. One Title 17 and one maybe Chapter 5.
Chapter
something.
5. So one that covers the land use aspects and one that covers the licensing requirements.
Just
That
wanted to
makes
keep that in
sense to
mind.
keep it consistent with others.
I agree, but I think it's good to talk about all of it at the same time so we can
Sure.
understand what land use we want.
Yeah.
And maybe make some recommendations to, I guess, the council to make this.
No, and I'm not saying don't have this discussion with the planning commission. I think we want your input, and I do think you need to consider it all together. But I am saying I think we should split our recommendations and say licensing, because VRD licensing was handled the same kind of way. Talk about it all together and then
Yeah.
separate it.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Well, I think in reference to what you said, we discussed 2 weeks ago, the possibility, if we had a pod of requiring a bathroom nearby and tables and chairs, and perhaps the food truck would be covered or some area,
Right.
seating area would be covered, yeah.
Yep.
But I have my question was, if there's a restaurant, could they set up a food truck in their parking lot as long as they do not eliminate any required parking for that restaurant establishment?
If a restaurant wanted, I mean, if they are the property owners of the underlying property and they want to have a food truck in their area and it doesn't block any ingress or egress through the site for fire, health, safety standards, and it doesn't block any of their required parking, under our current draft, yes.
They would be allowed, okay.
Yes.
Did we just reduce required parking everywhere, or was it just for Taft?
Ocean Lake
And Ocean Lake.
for existing structures.
So those places got a little bit of an advantage.
No.
It's
That
for new
is for
uses
residents.
going into existing structures, I believe.
I'm sorry?
I believe it's for new uses going into existing structures.
Uh-huh. So if I were to go into a property in Taft, I'm just throwing this out there, if I were to go into Taft and say it was, I'm just gonna, a bowling alley, and then I turn it into a restaurant, I'm changing the use of the property. Now my parking requirements have gone down, I could then throw a food truck out there.
Oh, I think your parking requirements would go up if you went from a bowling alley to a restaurant. But if you went from let's say you went from a bowling alley to an office, your parking requirements would go down.
Okay.
Okay, so the complete application requirements, this is what would be required to move forward with a review of their proposal. A signed and dated application form. I'm still not sure if the special use permit application form is what we need, or if we just want the general land use form and add a box for food trucks. So I'm still, I was under discussion with Richard about that and forgot to make changes. Signed application and agreement from the property owner for the use of the site. So that's making sure that, someone's not circumventing the process and or breaking any leases or, no contest agreements, that kind of stuff. Already have an approved state and or county permit for operation of food trucks, carts as required by subsection, which would be later down the way. A written statement addressing how they meet the criteria for approval of this section. A site plan to scale showing the proposed location or locations of the use and any existing development on the site. This site plan shall indicate locations of any proposed temporary structures and include a circulation plan showing all access points for the site, all driveways, streets, roads, and parking areas. If the location of common eating area, if any. You may note the way that I wrote this is it's not requiring a common eating area to be established, but if they want one, they can. Also, identification of where the nearest public beach access is. A disposal plan for their waste, which is typically a circle on a site plan saying garbage. If applicable, based upon the designated class under state of either 1 through 4, disposal plans for grease, sanitary, sewer, and or wastewater. And then a signed agreement or plan for restroom and hand washing needs.
So you've included all 4 of the classes?
I did include all 4 of the classes for the basis of grease, sanitary, sewer, and wastewater.
Is there a place in town a visitor could dump their septic from their RV?
Yeah.
There is?
Where?
Chinook Wind?
And Taft.
Because that's the same kind of setup they need for the food trucks to dump the gray water, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think we talked about just class 3 and 4. So
We did, yeah, so I have some notes and I went through the meeting minutes. And so what this is saying is, based upon the designated class, if they're gonna be cooking and utilizing with grease, they would need to have a disposal plan for that. Now, what I received is that we had, I'll just call you guys out. I had Steve as 3 and 4. I had Sean as all options. Mayo.
No, 3 and 4 is all I wanted.
Oh, 3 and 4 was all you were interested in? Okay. 3 and 4, Miles I had you at 1 through 4. I had Gary at 3 and 4. I had Patty at 3 and 4. And Marie, I don't know that she identified. She said a variety of food. That's what my notes have. So, if we want, now I'm glad that you brought this up because thinking about the plastic products, going back to the general requirements, if you are just doing a prepackaged service off of a table without any preparation or anything of the materials, it'd be really hard to avoid plastic.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to avoid that sort of
Here's a plastic cup, here's a plastic bowl, here's a plastic
3 and 4.
spoon.
3 and 4.
3 and 4 is a truck. is a food truck.
Okay.
So
Okay.
And I had one comment, 6 and 7, I would kind of like to see at least a picnic table or a food truck to encourage people to sit down and eat their meal there, rather than taking it down to the beach to eat on the beach. But, so I think it'd be kind of nice to have a
require,
food truck, you have maybe a bathroom identified nearby, and you got a little table, picnic bench, they can sit at and eat their meal.
I guess if they have an area where the food truck's supposed to be, a picnic table's not really that big a deal, but if you're traveling, that's kind of a lot.
Yeah, or we could look at, is there a shared outdoor plaza space or something else that is already established nearby that they could get an agreement from? I guess it doesn't need to be an actual wood picnic table that doesn't compact and fit onto a truck, but some kind of seating area.
Although I've been around here, this would be the only way I'd want to go.
So what does Newport do in something like this?
I'm not sure.
Or Tillamook, or any of the other coastal
Yeah,
towns?
I forgot my notes on that. It's an optional thing, I believe, as far as seating goes. It's not a requirement to provide it if you don't want to.
I visualize it like a truck coming once a day or twice a day to the hospital that's being built. And those people will rush out, buy their sandwiches and take them back inside, except occasionally, and there should be benches out there to sit on, I would think, in the landscaping area. So
Is that the hospital's responsibility or the food truck's responsibility?
I think it's the hospitals in that case.
Same with schools.
So what if we put in something that said, if there's consensus on this issue, undeveloped sites shall provide some sort of seating.
There you go. Sweet.
Yeah.
And it can be temporary.
Yeah.
that sounds good. I mean, I think it's gonna be difficult to keep people from
Walking around.
stopping at the food truck, buying their food and taking it to the beach.
Or taking
But I-
it home.
Right, but
Keep driving.
I think your point of having something there might encourage them to stay there and eat it.
I mean, at the farmer's market, there are lots of tables set up
That's
in the
right.
center of
Right.
the tents there, and I
Yeah,
go
it's
there, get my meal and sit down at the table and eat it there.
Right.
Yeah. Or I
Meet
take it
somebody
home,
new.
yeah.
I like those tables. You can sit at a table with other people, meet somebody new.
Okay.
Is there consensus that you want me to draft some kind of language for that?
Yeah, for undeveloped sites.
Okay. And
When you have location of common eating area, if any, you can just change that to make that work.
Well-
Reword 6 or.
do we want to require a location of a common eating area in all realms
If
of
there's
this?
a pod,
Unless there's one available already, I think that's what we're saying. isn't it?
Yeah, so she was saying if she added language like undeveloped areas or something, so you would be supplying it there, but not necessarily at the hospital.
I mean, doesn't the area have to be developed?
Well, it has to meet the site, yes, so it will have to meet site plan approval. You can't park on grass, you can't park.
So at that point, you might as well require the table, because they've got to develop a spot to park on, or somebody does.
What about
So the site developer, we require them to have a table.
if we had pods, but what if we only had one truck that's utilizing the
Where's
gas station?
Or the parking lot at the hospital.
Or the parking
That
lot at
would-
a hospital, if it's a singular truck versus a pod.
That's tricky, isn't it?
What if a food truck came to a motel that faces the beach? One of them, I guess. Would they be allowed to park there next to the 15th Street?
That's up to you guys in the next section.
We're gonna talk about that. We'll get there.
We haven't gotten there yet. That's under the
That's-
performance standards.
Yes, we'll get there. Richard, did you have something?
Just again, you have two kind of situations here. One, the existing situation where somebody with a food truck wants to park here in the city's parking lot, and city employees go down there and then they go back to their desk and eat, or they go out to the picnic table out here or the picnic table out here. And that's, I think if it's one truck on an existing developed site, I don't think you need to require tables and chairs. If you're talking about a pod, yeah, then for sure, you're gonna have multiple vendors and you're gonna want to require access to bathroom facilities, hand washing facilities, and obviously garbage collection and tables and chairs.
Do your magic, Lindsay.
I'll try. I only walk into Richard's office like 3 or 4 times. Okay. So if applicable, based upon the designated class, and I'll just put 3 or 4. And then I think we need to put in general requirements that say 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think it's really important to state that that's only what we're considering is 3 and 4. 1 and 2 are not options.
Okay. And I'll reference the state law on that. Okay. Going to performance standards and operational requirements. Parking and vehicle circulation. A food truck cart must not block any designated travel or fire lanes within a parking lot and must not occupy any parking space that is required for a use on the same site without a shared parking agreement from the property owner. So say it's a nighttime business. I don't know what kind of nighttime businesses we have, or maybe it's the Bay House. They don't open till 4. Maybe they'd be willing to agree to have a food truck there for the lunch hour to operate off of the site or something. And we would just want to make sure that everybody can pull in and out safely and securely and move on with their day.
But does this wording require approval from the planning department regarding the site plan development? Because,
Yes,
okay,
yes, this would be something that we review.
so without a shared parking agreement from the property owner and approval from the planning department for that shared?
Well, we just wouldn't approve it if it's blocking any designated travel or fire lanes or occupying a parking space that's required for use on site.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Are any of these food trucks capable of having somebody stay in it, live in it at night? In other
No.
words.
No, they're so small. I mean, your
I've
workspace
seen
is
some, but
smaller.
I was
No.
curious if
The
they're.
workspace is actually probably smaller than trying to work in one of the, like
Okay.
literally within the
So
space
we
of
don't have
this
to worry
table.
about somebody deciding to camp out in this thing at night,
You'd be
so.
lucky to have this much
The,
room.
the health department would severely, yeah,
Just
that would be a
asking, making
big,
sure,
big
clarifying.
no-no on there.
Good, okay, clarifying.
So now I need to unlock the computer again, but we can talk about the distances from beach access and determine if we still want to make some requirements and what those would be. So the lovely Sandy Gruger in our GIS department put together this map for all of us to identify beach access around the community. So I'm just going to start with, we'll go up to Wacoma Beach. So in Wacoma area, we have 5. There's, the blue ones are vehicle access for emergency vehicles. So these are all accessed by, available to be accessed by pedestrians to get down to the beach. And what we've done is created some buffers. These ones. So, we have, this is what, must be.
Too busy.
Okay, here we go. This is the one I was looking for. So we'll put 50 feet and 100. Why is this trying to get it? There we go. Okay. So what you're seeing here, let's just go to the casino. Pick on them. The 50-foot buffer is not much at all. In the yellow area, we have the 100-foot buffer. Here's what a 200-foot buffer looks like. 300. I'm just going to go through these really fast. There's 400. There's 500. 750. And then I asked her to do 1,000 feet as well. So, most people will walk about a quarter mile to get to where they're going with something in their hands, which is why I wanted to be able to provide that.
So 1,000 feet is a quarter mile?
It's about it.
Less than
Oh, yeah, it's a couple 100 feet less than a quarter mile.
What's the average size of a city block in Lincoln City, do we know?
6.5 miles.
6.5 miles, it depends on Lincoln City, Nelscott, Taft, which one are you talking about?
Each
Rose End? Typically, let's see here, I can measure a block right here. So, we've got,
Yeah,
that's 250 feet.
yeah, okay. Because I was thinking, when I was
And
reading
that's the
this,
short
maybe
way,
three blocks would be the buffer zone from the beach access? Or its equivalent?
So about 700, 750. So I can put that on and show you guys what that looks like. Without.
Yeah.
Oh, of course I went too far. So let's go down to D River here. So these are clipped by the vegetation line. It just doesn't, it's hard to see because there's still land even though it's ocean. So Deep River, this would, take.
Basically take everything out west of 101.
Except for the north part, yeah. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably not a bad idea.
That's probably not a great idea.
I think that's an impractical idea, though.
Keeps the numbers down. Look, there's a cat.
See the openings there.
There's a tiny Who owns that?
It's sticking in that gap up there.
But if you go up to Nelscott area,
Mm-hmm.
that would be east of 101 if we took the 750, but it would be right across 101. And not, yeah.
So,
What's the next option, 500?
well, yes, I mean,
Now you're more like two blocks or less.
uh,
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm just gonna scale through the city to see, so you guys can see.
I wouldn't do less than that.
So that does, here, let's just zoom into the wayside area.
So Moe's would be precluded from putting a food cart in
Yeah.
their lot.
Yep, they can take it someplace else. They could. They could.
Newport.
Sorry. The airport. That might be more reasonable.
500,
Yeah.
well, Cutler
Those
City.
ones in the south part of town wouldn't be zoned right anyway. They're all zoned
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is all residential
Yeah,
anyways.
can we block out the R1?
I can't because this is just a pre-made map. I can put the zoning
Oh.
on so we can see what it is.
Do the
But I'd have to zoom
residential
in.
zoning. then we can-
Well, I can only put all zoning on.
Oh, okay, so.
But, so this is the Taft core,
Right.
you know, so,
That's permissible in that area.
and this is vacant land right here, I believe, to some extent,
Where they're developing it.
yeah. You know, and then what do we got here, Nelscott? So pretty much all in Nelscott Business District would be okay if you stuck with the 500.
Yeah.
The recreational, commercial, or is that, Kate, is that RM right here?
That's R15.
R15, okay.
There's really nothing down by Canyon.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all
you'd want to
residential.
pick it up on 101 anyways.
And that area, the Dee River, there's a lot of food establishments there already, so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's not.
Now, just because it, like, let's pick on a tax parcel here. It's a matter of the truck not being within 500 feet, not the tax parcel it's on. Oops. I can't get, Miles, are you having a hard time seeing? Sorry. I zoomed too close. So,
So there,
let's find one with the commercial zoning near it though. Okay, so for this one, I don't know that Vivian's or whoever owns these
Yeah,
parcels
so it
would
could be
wanna
this one.
allow a food truck on there, but it's,
They
you know,
could.
they could as long as the truck itself is 500 feet, not necessarily the parcel that it's on. How it's currently written. So I want to just bring that up.
So we're focusing on the actual official beach access points.
Correct.
But every one of those hotels that's along the coast has
Has
access. So are we really going to achieve what we're trying to achieve here if we're simply looking at
Public.
the public access points?
No, we're not. I'd agree. You made a very good point. Maybe, what if we did a map with 500 feet of the beach?
Like from the vegetation line,
Yeah.
500 feet from the vegetation line?
Well, I mean,
What if
if our
we-
point is to keep the trash off the beach,
Then we
we're
need
not
to
gonna
be-
do it
we
with
can't
just looking at public
Police
access.
all the
points.
adults in the world.
No, you're
We
right.
gotta protect the.
We
our-
can't.
That
But we
beach
don't-
is a
But we
main-
pull
No, I
900
understand.
pounds of trash off the beach in Rhodes End alone on the 5th of July.
Yeah, I'm not,
So
I'm not saying that it's
anything that
not
we
a
can
good
do.
idea, I'm just pointing out, we can't
Yeah, I understand your
fix some
point.
of these things. I mean, if somebody wants to go out to the beach on a 90-mile-an-hour day with their hot dog in hand, good luck keeping the hot dog. Really, I mean, if a seagull doesn't take it from you.
I think we need to be careful, because if we unleash this, it's really hard to pull it back.
No, that's
And
very
if
true.
we permit food trucks and we discover within a year that we're picking up many more pounds of trash off the beach than we ever used to.
So what if we just
How
say
do we get rid of the
no
food
food
trucks? We
trucks
can't
at
do it.
public or private parking, beach access?
It doesn't have to be public beach access. We could require them to show us where the nearest beach access is. Because I have as we all know, we can utilize the parking lot and go use a hotel's beach access to walk down to the beach, and once we're there, there's nothing that can really be done.
Right.
But, you know, there's also places in town that hotels are on cliff sides that are 80 feet tall, and they're not gonna get to the beach, you know, necessarily from through that hotel. So,
I know we're not gonna police everyone, but this is more of a discourage.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to see if there's a way we can do this, because that looks like a lot of, you can't do business here. And it might be because there's a crap ton of beach accesses in our town. 7 miles of beach.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't there be? But I don't want to, I want to let these guys happen, but I also don't want to discourage them from potentially looking at the most popular places to conduct business and be most successful.
Then you got to question whether or not you're okay with the beach being trashed. Because that's what you're,
Right.
that's the equation, and how much damage does that do to the city's reputation in order to allow some guys to make some money?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you might be destroying the economic driver of the community by allowing some guys to make some money.
I walk the beach almost every day, and I would say the beach is remarkably clean. It really is. People take it, but
When
you
it's
know, I don't want to
trashed.
see that changed.
Right, when it's trashed just because the storms come in,
Yeah.
it looks a whole lot horribler than you'd like to.
Storm trash is one thing,
Right.
and I know where that comes from. It's from people letting it go there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you guys. I want the least amount of trash possible. I'm just trying to have an open dialogue with the whole thing, so that we're not screwing anybody in the long run.
And you know, our goal is protecting the community at large. So.
Mhm.
Can I ask if you're looking at these properties, you have all these hotels and they have parking requirements. And obviously, if you stay at a beachfront hotel during the season, there's not going to be extra parking available. So where exactly are we talking about allowing a food truck to locate
Who
in
has
a
extra
developed
parking?
parking lot? Because I don't really know that you're going to have a business. Not to mention, if there's a restaurant associated with the hotel, they're not going to be enthusiastic about amending their site plan, even if it is a minor amendment, to allow a location for a food truck.
Right, right. Yeah, because my first thought was, well, why wouldn't the casino just put a bunch of food trucks out there on that vacant lot that they have north of them? And then I thought, oh, because they want people inside eating and gambling, and so that would be not in their best
But
interest. So you make a good point.
I said earlier that I think food trucks have the potential to apply to a completely different clientele and a new clientele, folks that would maybe not go into the restaurant establishments because they're more expensive than otherwise. So I think, yeah, I would not be surprised to see the casino put up food truck pods in their parking lots, because that's going to be a source of new income. It really is.
Well,
And
I
it
don't think
won't
we have
compete with the
anything to say
restaurants.
on their property, do we?
No, but I mean, just as an example, you know.
Do we have any kind of, do we have any information on these lots that have required parking, if they have excess parking, or did they overbuild parking? Because as far as I can tell, everybody's like trying to skinny that parking right in there.
yeah, we do not have any analysis of that. It is something that could, you know, it would be a case-by-case site review.
I mean, Richard makes a good point, that the logical fallback to all of this is that there's probably no realistic lot that has extra parking. Unless,
Not maybe during, well, yeah.
definitely not during peak season. So the extra parking is kind of the hitch for everybody, right? If they can only use an extra parking or build a specific thing for this to work on, that kind of covers everywhere.
I would think that if you're gonna, let's say you have extra parking, okay, you overbuilt your parking. You're gonna come in and you amend your site plan and say, okay, we can get 3 food trucks in these extra spaces here. We still have to look at it on a site plan basis and decide if that's safe, ADA accessible, close enough to a bathroom. There's still other issues associated with it.
So.
Sure, but if they get through all of that, and the last thing that we have is, gee, we just don't want you getting trash on the beach, and we don't have anything in here that says that, then we can't disregard their application.
Something to think about as well is this, when a food truck parks in a parking space, they need that second parking space to serve their customers. If you had 3 extra parking spaces, you're not really getting 3 trucks in the area. It's probably 1.
Yeah, I'd like to know.
Could we look at the whole map, the 6-mile stretch with the 500-foot limit for public accesses, and
I
see
can
how much of
try.
that area is?
I'm not sure that.
Or we could stroll from top to bottom, maybe.
Yeah, because these, here, let me see if I can turn these off. Well, there you go.
Oh, that's it?
That's a 500.
That's what 500 from these mapped beach accesses looks like.
Not yet.
That's what, roughly 50%?
What do you mean? 50% of the
Of
beach
the
access?
shoreline.
The beach access, of
Yeah.
the shoreline.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of high beach access points along there that nobody can use no matter what they do.
Well, and these ones, we only map the ones that actually have pedestrian access.
Well, most of those on the north end only have like 2 parking spots.
There's a lot of street parking you can use.
And all of Roads End is residential, right?
Yes, all Roads End is residential, so.
Okay, so what are we thinking?
You weren't meant to be on the beach.
500 feet? Beach access?
Yeah.
No, less than that.
Anything less than that?
No less than that.
Oh, no less than that. Yeah.
You okay with that?
500 feet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about lake access? Are we concerned about that?
That's all residential.
Almost except for what?
Except for
State
Vivian.
parks, that's out of our,
Right.
There's
And
the
then
little
also-
marina.
right, that's residential commercial, isn't it? So they don't have any extra parking, and I feel like they don't have enough parking as it is.
By the lake, there's the Blue Heron Landing.
Can we scroll
That's
down to see the?
Right, so,
You want to see the whole lake?
I mean, just scroll down.
I can't.
well,
Sorry,
they had
files
extra parking,
moved, so my
right?
connection to the. My connection to the.
So what areas on the lake could be?
Well, let's pull up our zoning map.
It's really just about from boat dock, I mean, the last boats. Besides,
Well, one of them's a
east of
state
it,
park.
I thought it was so.
on the other
Okay,
side.
so,
Yeah, and then the rest of it's all county on the other side. and that's-
yeah, this is
that's
just
actually
this
our
side.
business.
They're commercial.
Right.
They've got a state park on the far side also.
What is this here?
The KOA.
So that's recreational,
KOA parking.
commercial.
Yeah.
It's
Camping.
not on the lake.
Which is what? The brown is what?
This is recreational, commercial.
Okay.
Okay, so it could
And that's where the marina is.
But Brown's residential.
One of them.
Right.
Yeah, the RV park and the marine.
We did list PI as a potential zone.
Does recreational commercial allows for food?
However, I
Yeah.
think this is the hospital here.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's just PI and that recreational commercial by the marina, and then
That little
the
piece.
general commercial here.
But that lot near the bridge would need
Where
to
is
be
my-
developed, because it's all.
You've got
That's
a
the-
Well,
hotel.
it'd have to go through a site plan.
nice park right now in Hostetler Park
It's
though,
both. It's the
that
park
is
and
on the lake.
hotel.
And-
Right here.
Yeah, and
That actually might be
there's a
good.
lot of land back there, even behind the Hostetler Park, which is,
Here's what.
Can you
food
guys-
trucks
guys-
in Tsunami Zone?
Let's talk
Hey.
one at a time.
One at a time, please.
Yes.
Miles, you were talking
there's a
about,
lot of land over there. It's not blacktop though, but there's a roadway and then there's a bridge that is not, you're not
that's the
allowed.
state park. So,
I know, but it combines the state park and then there's a nice walking bridge across the wetlands to the state, the camping area of the state park.
so the green zone, it's not allowed in.
Right.
The red zone, right here, it is. I'm gonna turn the zoning off so you can see the aerials. So, whatever that hotel is.
That's a cultural center.
That's the
Oh, the cultural center, okay. I just figured it was a hotel.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
So it's that little area that's hash marked by the D River as frontage.
Yeah, that's how,
Hostetler Park.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to apply the same 500-foot principle to lake access points?
That's the only one.
Is that the only one? Yeah.
it's this and the general, there's two within the city, this and the general commercial.
I say we should apply it because you've got the D River right there. It's going to flush all that crap right out to the ocean beach.
Well, that's crap. It's all undeveloped in marshland.
But you're thinking everyone's going to leave garbage. They're not all going to.
The wind can.
No faith in,
I walk the beach.
Well, all right, so the question
Do you want food
Is-
carts?
So the question is, do we want to apply the same buffer zone to those two access points on the lake? I see a yes, yes, yes. Gary?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what's left that's a viable food cart location. I mean, it's gonna get
There's a
any,
lot.
that's gonna get any foot traffic.
There's a lot left.
At all.
Most of the highway is all the stuff that's frontage on the highway is all available.
East, yeah, a lot of areas in Taft, areas in Melscott that would be right along 101 there, both east and west.
where is this beach access at, right, or the,
Where?
I wanna know where the lake access is, right around here. Is that that's the state park access on their dock? Okay, so it'd have to be 500 feet from there.
Down here.
Is there actual access down
There
here?
is access at Hostetler
Yeah.
Park, yeah.
It looks like you're driving into the hotel, but
I put my kayak up there.
Where at?
Right there.
Yeah, see where the rocks are?
See that
On the side, you can
cul-de-sac?
walk right
That's-
there.
You can park there.
Yeah, but where's the beach access? This is it? Right here? Right under the bridge?
Access to.
Right under the.
Well,
bridge.
lake access.
Lake
Well-
access, right there.
To the right.
I come from the Puget Sound, the lake's still a beach. We're going to the beach, it's a lake, it's an ocean, it's a
It's actually
sound.
river access.
That's true, thank you, Patty. Okay, so it's located right here.
A little further south, or to the, rocks are to the right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see the rocks, but I didn't see how you actually get to the lake.
Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Right in that area you can.
Right here?
No, right through there, I've done it.
Right there.
Right in that area, yeah.
Where all the driftwood is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you can also walk
only like
across
4
the
inches
bridge
deep.
to the
Yeah.
undeveloped.
Not very hard. You can actually put a canoe in or something like that if you wanted to.
Go straight out. Okay.
all right.
Okay, so I will find the lake accesses, and that would be publicly owned, privately owned, or all of them?
What about that spot right there? Because right there.
Right there.
Right here? Is this the publicly owned area that we have?
Yes. Is that the open space piece, or is that the?
I thought that was the
it's an
state
open
park.
space piece.
No,
I don't think there's two.
No, it's
That is state park.
It
That-
It is.
That greenish, light green stuff.
And that's where their
Maybe it's next to that.
boardwalk goes, connects to.
Yeah, state park. That's
area.
Yeah, that's state parks.
It's not gonna be zoning, our zoning maps are quite contour shaped.
I think you might be spending some time with Sandy.
Did you all decide if you were going to have it be a certain number of feet away from any beach access, or were you keeping the word public?
Public.
We're keeping.
Keeping public, okay.
Okay. And public lake access.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no drive-throughs, no food truck cart may provide or serve customers as a drive-through facility. You guys agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Signs, business identification and promotional signs and graphics wholly applied to the surface of the truck cart are exempt from a sign permit and not regulated on the total area. All additional signage must conform to the standards outlined in LCMC, our sign code.
Okay.
So I'm thinking like a wrap. If you do one of those wrap jacks and your truck driving down the street, if you use some duct tape to put up a banner, I don't think that would fly.
Well, I think we're also,
Or it would fly, yes.
Maybe not where you
it would be like a flying sign, then they are prohibited. But I believe we're not using defining terms. We're getting rid of the content-based terms. So identifying signs,
So we'll remove
you can have
business.
signage on your food truck not to exceed X size, and that's all. And it could say, "I like beer," have nothing to do with the food you're eating.
How about identification and graphics?
No, just say
No.
signage.
Graphics.
Signage not to exceed X.
Fully applied to the
No,
service.
so we're saying signage can be completely covering the vehicle.
Right. I think
And
what he's
that's not
saying is that you just need to take
I
out
wouldn't say
business
that.
identification.
I would just say a food truck may have signage on the vehicle not to exceed X, whatever square footage you want to go with. And not tell them that it has to be identification or relate to the food or relate to how much
Right,
they like
but-
beer or whatever.
But can it just say,
Wholly and
signs
permanently.
and graphics wholly applied to the surface of the truck
And permanently, I
are
would
exempt? And
suggest.
that way we don't have to figure out, well, your truck's bigger than my truck, so your sign.
Yeah,
Truck is
just,
smaller.
if we're gonna let them cover the whole vehicle, they don't need
It's not going to be a
A-frames
tractor
or anything
trailer,
else.
right? So
No. No, I hope not.
Signs, sign and graphics wholly and permanently applied to the surface of the truck/cart are exempt from a sign permit
Yeah.
and not regulated on the total area. And that permanently will reduce the duct tape and
Yeah.
banner.
I do too.
Would you like to allow flags?
No.
Richard?
no
No. No capes.
flags are prohibited.
I think that's a universal.
Okay, I'm having too much fun.
Yeah.
And so if they want an A-frame, they need to come in and get a permit and make sure they comply with the sign code or any other temporary signs that might be allowed.
Yeah.
So, state and county requirements, all applicants must meet state and county standards relating to, but not limited to, food preparation, licensing, health and safety standards.
Right.
Moving on to the criteria for approval, the director shall approve applications for food trucks/carts only if the following criteria is met. And like I said, I'm still not sure it's a special use permit. We need to figure that out. Granting of the permit will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, comfort, convenience, and general welfare. Will not adversely affect the established character of the surrounding neighborhood will not be injurious to the property or improvements in such vicinity and/or zone in which the property is located, and can be adequately served by such public facilities and street capacities without placing an undue burden on such facilities and streets.
Okay.
So we'll,
Oops.
go ahead.
I was just going to question adversely affect the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. That seems kind of fudge.
Whenever we exercise discretion in land use, we require a land use process, which means, if you're gonna make this administrative director's decision, well, because we're gonna have the exercise of all this discretion, it's gonna have to be subject to an appeal and then a full quasi-judicial hearing. So you have, again, two scenarios. You have existing developed areas that may need an amendment to their existing site plan to allow this use, and then you have properties like, on 101 that may have a commercial zone that may want to develop essentially a parking lot, a pod for this kind of use. So in the latter, with it's going to be a pod, it's going to have 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 food truck spaces. I could see going through the full quasi-judicial process or doing an administrative process first with an appeal to the full process. With a minor amendment to a site plan to add a space for one truck, I don't know that I want all those discretionary land use criterion, which have to be interpreted in findings by either first the planning director and then on appeal to the planning commission and a de novo appeal. So we should probably think about what clear and objective business generating kind of standards could we use to encourage people to do this on existing developed sites. And I still wouldn't want to go through too much process for the pods, because if it's a vacant piece of property and it's zoned commercial, we're going to want a site plan. But do we want to involve the kind of conditional use approval criterion, which typically just means you guys can do whatever you want, because conditional use has all this open-ended criteria, and you say, well, it's not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and then I go to Luba and I defend that. And I could probably win every time because it's going to be this, very broad criteria. So
something that made me think of is 1772 site plan. If you're establishing a parking lot, you have to meet the parking lot standards of the landscaping of the parking lot. Do we want to require that they fully develop a vacant site with the landscaping or other
That's
aspects?
a business.
What's that?
They're a business just like any other.
Okay.
1752 240 site plan review. Again, the full site plan with all the paved parking and landscaping and everything. Great if it stays that. But I actually think that you guys should think about. That's how I think of this use, right?
Temporary.
Go through. I think of it as, however, an interim use, that someone, like a guy who owns some property, has been holding onto it for 20 years, wants to get something going on it, so he wants to build some infrastructure, parking lot, and that parking lot may be consistent with his ultimate development plans for, whatever, shops or whatever, but if he gets the parking lot out there and gets some minimal facilities out there, he can at least start getting some income with the food trucks. So I wouldn't want, and I think the ADA guy is going to say, yeah, you know what, we really need paved spaces. Although he told me something about, you can put down plywood. It's no, that doesn't sound right to me. But not bare ground.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to do anything other than paved if we were actually talking about a pod.
Right.
But you could hold off on some other stuff like landscaping in order to make it economically feasible, or phase that in over time or something like that. Or have them preserve, instead of having them bulldoze everything and then, now you're going to have to plant all these trees, because how about you just microsite it in the sense that you just clear what needs to be cleared to build the parking lot. We'll leave the trees in there, and you don't have to put in any trees because you haven't taken them down.
Right.
So we've talked about parking lots for parking trucks on. What about, do we want to require parking nearby for the food carts, trucks, or make it a pedestrian oriented surface?
No, pedestrian friendly, I think. Yeah, I don't think we need that. You know, if you have a food truck that you really like what they produce, you're gonna walk to it. You can walk to it.
Okay.
6 months of the year, you're not.
Yeah.
6 months of the year, you're not.
Yeah, you can.
You're such a duck.
I guess I would side with the people who aren't lazy, so, hey, let's drive down and get some takeout at the food truck kind of thing, and that's not gonna be, let's walk down there and be like, it's pouring rain, I'm not going.
We've kind of just forced them away from all of the public parking. We did with this.
No, looks like that's public.
The vast majority of public parking is at every beach access.
There's public parking lots downtown.
I understand, but if you're talking about people who are riding on the road,
What
they
is
just came
this
off
right
18,
here?
they're still doing 55 in their head, and they hit 30, and they're like, oh crap, that's right, I'm hungry. Oh, that food truck looks good, but it's just a cart, I'm out of here. Where do I park? Oh, maybe there's parking here or there. I think the parking is getting sticky with this one. And
Well, don't you think though, if somebody is in that situation, they're gonna go through the drive-through?
Yeah, they're going to McDonald's.
No,
I mean, I
because
think it's a
I
little
hate going to
different.
McDonald's and stuff like that when I'm driving. I want food that tastes like food and not something that's cardboard, but that's me.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would like to see more people
I
walking the
really
food
like to
trucks, but I would
encourage
also like to see that
pedestrian
the tourists in town have somewhere to park to walk to these things.
I think, I don't know, who knows how many food trucks we'll have, but it looks like there's potential to have them from one end of the city to the other. And, you know, those people are gonna have them in their neighborhoods.
And they're not gonna post up where they can't get people to stop.
They're gonna have them in their neighborhoods where it's not too far to park someplace nearby and walk to the food truck or walk to it from your motel or your VRD. I think that's not a concern. Yeah.
I do think that if we were required, we could state that parking just has to be nearby, but then what's the point of that regulation? Because there's parking nearby anywhere.
I don't want to require parking.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my personal.
And the other thing, it adds to the expense of the procedures of the operation, and we want to
Right.
minimize the expense.
Yeah.
So if there's any infill in the city that we would like to have redeveloped, this is a perfect place. to put a
I'd
food
rather
cart
see
there.
them put a picnic table in the parking spot than
Yeah.
a car.
Yeah, I would too.
So I do want to get back to Richard's point because I think it's really good. And I actually made a note that I need to create a subsection of site plan review for food truck carts, most likely, because we don't want to burden the property owner to the point that they're not creating an opportunity. Yeah. And we do allow in some areas, and I'd have to defer to Kate, commercial parking all has to be paved, correct? But some residential parking may be gravel?
No, commercial parking has to be paved and residential parking has to be paved also.
But not, so we, okay.
So
So,
the issue might be, you know, the ADA guy's gonna say, you gotta have paved ADA space.
or pavers.
But do you really need, for customers, I mean, and so you need a paved space to put the truck so that people can get, you know, wheel up to it. You need a paved ADA space per truck. And then you may need other places for people to park. Maybe that's on the street, but at a minimum, you know, if this is an interim use, I'm thinking the pod, you know, I'd love to see someone develop a parking lot that's part of a future development, that, so it's not wasted. But if they just want to do it just for this use, I think if it's a pod, it should all be paved. If it's, unless there's some kind of interim use that we can give them as a, you know, you're only going to do this for 2 years or something. The council hasn't been real enthusiastic about limited time things like that. I think we're looking at paving or pavers or something.
Mm-hmm.
Temporary uses haven't been popular with the council.
I think that's something I need to go back to and drink 5 cups of coffee on and
Okay,
figure it out. Okay. Okay. So back to the criteria of approval, I think that I will work on reworking this so that it is defendable for our city attorney. And we should decide, do we want to establish an appeal process for food carts and trucks? Or,
I think if you have discretionary criteria, you have an appeal process.
yeah,
If you have very, and I think for a food cart or food truck pod, I think you probably ought to go that way. But in terms of just individual food trucks amending a site plan, I think you could probably get pretty clear and objective with those things. You know, you're not within so many feet of a beach access. You're in an extra parking space, and you have a second extra parking space for people to, you know, not get run over while they're standing there waiting to get their hot dog or whatever it is. I mean, I think you could look at that as, hey, it's commercial activity, right? And what zoning are we talking about? Commercial zoning. So we don't need those, residential kind of character of the neighborhood kind of things when we're there.
true, no. Okay. Okay. The second criteria for approval is the site is of sufficient size to accommodate the proposed uses. That's ultimately, obviously it has to meet all of the performance standards and operational requirements that we had already gone through. And then 3 is the application is compliant with all relevant statutory codes, regulations, and ordinances. So that would be, again, another double check to make sure the health department approval, the ADA requirements, and some other temporary signage, other items.
okay.
Upon revocation, upon review by the director, a food truck/cart permit may be revoked for one or more of the following reasons. 1, that the approval was obtained by fraud or that erroneous information was provided by the applicant. 2, the use is being exercised in violation of any statute, ordinance, law, or regulation.
What if someone is operating a food truck without a license? Is there any fines or penalties?
Yeah.
Do we need to write that?
We
in?
would
That
know
would
that.
be the
That's,
license.
Huh?
If we split this in terms of, well, everything in the code is a Class B violation unless it's stated otherwise. So if we said you have to have a license to operate a food truck, just like you have to have a license to operate a food cart, I assume we'd probably have it as a Class B violation, maximum $1,000 fine per day, $265 presumptive fine, $135 minimum fine. Just, that's our standard. So if we split this into site plan kind of issues and in that site plan you have in pods versus an amendment to an existing site plan to add a food cart or 2, then the licensing aspect of the food trucks would be just like food carts. You don't have a license, you're operating in violation of the code, you get a citation.
Can we find that they just serve bad food?
I'm going to say no to that.
But if they don't have salt and pepper.
Okay. And so we can add language into that operation of a food truck / cart without proper approval is a Class B violation, and just reference the code to make that clear. And then we've added an exemption that food truck cart permits are exempt from the requirement to operate from an enclosed building as stated in LCMC 504030. That is circling back around to what Mr. Appicello was addressing earlier, as far as structure, all businesses needing to be in an enclosed building. Now, we talked about the zones. I have some follow-up I need to do to amend some of this language and really go through it with a fine-tooth comb for the criteria of approval, as well as looking at site plan review requirements. I want to ask the Planning Commission, I assumed that we were talking in regards to number 1 under general requirements, the zones, that these would be a permitted outright use. Do they need to be a conditional use? Is there a thought or a reason why it might need a public review of a permit? An opportunity for
As long as
hearing.
we're not in residential areas, I go.
I have a question. Are any part of the Taft Village Core or the Nelscott Business District, are any parts of those residential or included residences?
Cottage, is it the cottage one?
Well, in Taft Village Core, there are a lot of
There's
residences.
a lot of, there's apartments above IGA.
But they're
There's a
like
lot of-
mixed use.
There's a lot of single-family homes, but they are zoned Taft Village Core.
There's a what?
They are zoned GBC, which is a mixed-use commercial zone, but single-family homes are a permitted use in that
They're
zone.
gonna have to let food trucks on it, property. We're gonna have no say.
In the Nelscott district, you have what, the business?
Right, so in Nelscott, along the highway, it's the Nelscott Business District, followed by the part in the middle that is a cottage residential, and then the blue is the beachside
Beach
mixed
side, yeah.
use.
So the residential portion would not be considered commercial for purposes of this. And then in the Ocean Lake, there's, isn't there?
So again, Ocean Lake has the Main Street Highway, which is proposed to
That's
allow them,
commercial.
the interior mixed use, and then the ocean front.
And so is the interior mixed use and the highway considered commercial and the?
They're all
the ocean?
they're all commercial, but in this draft that Lindsay's prepared, she's only suggesting the Main Street Highway.
And we did talk about them being within the pearls, so do we want to expand and have it be the whole pearl? Or do we want to limit it to the commercial,
Just the.
the
commercial.
high-intensity commercial, I should
High
say?
intensity
I
commercial.
mean, Nelscott, although it looks like commercial on there, if you walk there, it's neighborhoods.
Or real estate offices?
Well, that's on the main highway, but if you just go the next block back, it's all homes.
Yes.
And where half my friends live. And it's, I love walking those streets, even without the sidewalks, because there's just nobody back there. And if we allow food trucks back there, it's gonna make things, there's no room for a sidewalk anyway.
Well, there are motels on the beach, but those are near the beach accesses, so that
Right.
couldn't have food trucks there.
Yeah.
They're right.
Yeah, I think limiting it to the commercial
The 101 commercial? Okay.
makes more sense. I mean, we can always expand it later if we need to, but.
So if we look at, let's see, I can't zoom. Whoops. There goes the whole city.
Wow. Oh.
For miles in space.
I wanted to be able to look into the PI,
The professional
And-
campus.
professional campus and professional institutional. Or public
And
institutional.
that
Actually,
includes community.
PI is industrial.
Planned
So that's just
industrial.
Oh, planned industrial, okay. So nothing up north. We have the hospital area,
That's a pink, okay.
pink, and then I believe this is this a
That's
that's an
the-
assisted living?
Yeah, that's just a Lakeview Senior.
They would love a food truck.
And that's undeveloped and the ambulance facility there.
Oh, okay.
And this is undeveloped, the
Undeveloped,
church is
yeah.
right here.
It's undeveloped.
Okay.
I'm,
And then,
The other one is the city police station. and-
What's that one?
That's city, that's all city.
Is the plan.
and so it's my understanding the city has some deed restrictions on this property that wouldn't necessarily allow it anyway.
It might, I mean, it allows, it isn't zoned park, I think that's where we're planning to develop a park. I think the deed restriction says we have to use a certain portion of it for civic uses, and I'm not sure that spells out what they mean by that. You might know more about that.
All I know is that we're apparently not violating it.
Good. And then institutional is the purple. This is a storage unit,
That's planned industrial.
Yeah, industrial.
planned industrial, yeah, sorry.
Another storage unit,
North-
Storage units and then partially undeveloped, mostly,
There's a dog thing here.
yeah, there's some-
Stupid dog thing.
She's a cat person.
No.
And there's somebody else's property there.
Yeah. And then what's
That's storage.
more storage? Okay, so it's just storage units.
Where's the community college?
Community college is in the residential zone.
Yeah, it's in that strip of.
Oh, so we
Yeah.
couldn't have a food cart there then?
Well, so I'm wondering, is it possible to make an exception for existing businesses employing
We
more
could-
than a certain number of people
We
to
could look
capture
at,
the community college?
we could look at conditional uses and require a food truck as another conditional use to that approved conditional use.
Yeah, why not?
But, that, you know,
In just
it-
some zones.
well, we have the high school, we have the college.
We can't make any decisions about the high school. The high school is its own thing that the city doesn't regulate, correct?
Oh, we regulate the high school.
Oh, of course. we
Oh,
do.
really?
They gotta get permits and stuff,
The
yeah.
school would be a conditional use.
Okay.
The use of it in the residential is conditional, so it has to go through the process, but I'm not sure. That would be something that it's kind of a box I wouldn't want to open. It's a lot easier to define specific zones and there, because like churches are conditional uses. And then we could see them at literally every block in residential neighborhoods and stuff. So I know that it sounds like a great idea for the college students to have a food truck, but
I'm more
Don't-
concerned about the nursing staff at the hospital than I am about
well,
college.
that's actually in a zone that is not professional campus. It's not difficult to allow it just in
Okay,
that zone.
Okay, good.
Could a church rent out part of its parking lot for a food truck?
If they're in the correct zone and they have enough parking
Not enough
and,
extra.
They could do it. Okay.
yeah.
All that hypothetical extra.
Extra money.
You gotta measure pews and make sure they have enough stalls.
Or they can only operate it on Monday through
Saturday. Does that affect their, what's required for parking the day of week?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It would-
That would be
Study of
that would
the
be a
days.
parking agreement, a shared use parking agreement.
Sure, sure. So if the lot next to them borrowed some of theirs, is that how it goes? But I'm still not getting where this extra parking is anywhere.
Do you recall when
That's why you have to start
we
walking.
had a site plan that we looked at?
No, I meant on
that
people's
was
property.
That was an apartment complex, and they wanted a shared parking agreement with the dentist office that was in front of it.
Yes.
So that's the concept, is that the
So those
parking would
5
be
spots are
available.
extra. For both?
The parking would be available because of the time of day that the commercial.
So after 5 PM or
uses.
whatever?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So
Okay.
we then have an agreement.
Typically,
I'm slow.
places of worship though are conditional uses in almost every zone. So again, since it was approved through a conditional use process, you'd have to go through the conditional use process to add it. That's
Yeah, no.
awkward. And that means discretionary standards, public hearing.
Yeah.
It's usually a residential zone. Now, if it's zone commercial and it's a conditional use, I'm not exactly sure why a place of worship needs to be a conditional use in a commercial zone. It really should be a permitted use, and we could maybe fix that if we wanted to.
And if they're in, like you said, if they're in commercial zone, it should be an outright permit. Is that what we're
For a
discussing?
food truck cart,
Yeah.
regardless of the underlying permit of
Yeah.
the use, okay. As long as they can meet the criteria.
Well, I'm trying to get my, parking lot used. I mean, I'm really close to the community center.
He's gonna be renting out
Drive
parking
some
spots.
people,
Okay.
So, okay, so
What else do you
remove,
need?
should I remove the, not institutional, industrial? It's all storage spaces.
It's
Is
not-
there a
down
benefit
20
to us
Down
to?
23rd is not all in industrial, not storage.
Oh, well, but most of it's out in the county.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, you've got your building here, or,
There's an empty lot in front of me, there's my lot, and then there's the Morse excavation, which 98% of it's in the city. I think 2% of it's in the county. It's a
so leave industrial?
Julian,
Okay.
yeah, why not?
It's all along the frontage generally. Okay.
So we're all talking about private land, no city involvement on city-owned land for the development of a pod. Nothing, the city is not interested in getting involved in.
Well, I think you guys might have zoned out the one parcel we could have
Now, I think there's,
by the leak access.
go down to Taft, and then go to the city's parking lot on the east side of 101.
East side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a
The old
parking
school
lot in
down
there
there?
that is not,
It's never.
that is underutilized?
Is
that
that where
might
the
be-
bus
the one-
parking is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not bus
No.
parking,
It was
it's
in urban
directly
renewal.
east of Ace.
At the little community
Oh,
garden.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. That's where the RV
By
down
that
there.
bakery.
Right
So like,
now, back down.
That's the same lot with the community
There
Did
garden.
you get there? Is that it?
That's
Is
it.
that
Yeah.
directly east of Ace Hardware?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I thought that one might be a potential
So
site.
is that parking lot, that's owned by the city?
Yeah,
So again, my question, is there some reason we're excluding the city from developing a pod?
What's
Well,
is
the
that
city
zone?
council has to determine whether that's more valuable than a parking lot.
So if it's Taft Village Core, the city could do something there because it's in one of the districts that you've listed.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the next question is, are there TRT funds available to do something like this?
I doubt that Ed would
no.
get excited.
How you want to.
Don't tell me no.
A particular business over another business.
Yeah.
I think you're putting yourself in dangerous territory.
Well, the city has done business incubation, okay? So they could look at this as economic development, trying to get somebody started. Hey, I'm thinking about having my own restaurant. I'm going to start out with a food truck, Cello's Pizzeria, whatever.
Urban renewal, maybe?
Yeah, so that is something that the council could consider, and since you've picked this zone, that property would fall within that zone. But that's a renewal economic development kind of issue.
Do we own the school district lot down there yet?
No.
Do we want
But
it?
that would be in the
A
wrong
Superfund
zone, I
site?
believe.
I don't want to.
Well, they might go together.
Okay, have we beat this up enough?
No, because I just realized something. We have commercial right along Schooner Creek here, and do we need to put a buffer from that?
That's residential.
It
Well,
isn't
it's
really-
not-
it is
it's
really
not zoned
developed as-
residential.
Right, it is zoned commercial for reasons
it's
unknown
developed
to me, but
residential.
it's,
Maybe in the comprehensive plan,
There's
we
no
change the
business.
zoning to residential.
No, it's just homes,
yeah, it is all homes.
just in the flood zone homes.
Okay, and that's the other question. Are we encouraging development in the tsunami zone?
Considering the state law requires the vehicles have to be able to be operable and movable at all times. I mean, these aren't permanent,
No.
placements.
Escape.
Would you like to make sure that, I mean, if we, that might limit just a little to,
I think we need to look into why that's zoned commercial in the first place. 'Cause
I was gonna put my schooner along there and go out fishing every day.
Well, there are a lot of areas of the city where the development
It's
doesn't
like
match the zone.
Cutler City probably did it back in the 40s and
Story. Okay,
Probably thought maybe
well,
there'd be
that's
some-
for another meeting.
I'm sure it's gonna be a marina development.
I would say that that wouldn't fit any of the road access requirements. There is no off-street parking, so to speak, down there.
it's.
Well,
I mean,
those are all
it's
hubs.
literally.
And that's all private property.
What's there now does, I mean,
It's all residential.
but if it could fit a food truck and they had extra parking, we're not restricting it to go in a residential site in a commercial
But doesn't
zone.
it change the use if it's residential and they go to change? Then
It's zoned commercial.
It's zoned
Doesn't matter.
commercial, that's what we're
they're changing
basing
the
this on.
use.
No,
No?
Those are
No.
all on.
So instead of it just being residence,
They're all on.
if we have a single-family home in the Nelscott district, and they want to put a food truck on there, and they have the space and can meet the criteria because it's allowed in that district, under the way that we've discussed it, they can do it.
okay.
So,
Yeah, scroll down.
something to think about. How do you guys want me to come back to you? Do we want another, maybe 10 or 15-minute work study on an agenda item, but where I would just address it at the dais because we're working on other things? And summarize what I've come to before we draft an ordinance for public hearing? Or
One more work session.
one more?
One more
Or
brief,
maybe a short one?
Or
just a short.
A wrap-up
without
one?
our
Yeah.
opinions.
Short.
Okay.
It'll be shorter if we don't say anything.
I'll give it 10 minutes.
Or just a review of your draft ordinance prior to the public hearing.
Yeah, yeah. If you
Before
could
notice
bring
of
us
the
a-
hearing?
Yes,
Right.
that would be even better.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, that was a really good conversation, you guys. We've got a lot of work to do.
All that talk about food.
We have examples of these carts here.
That'll be.
I do not believe that we could take donations.
In the meeting. Okay,
Like do a field trip.
Okay.
all right.
So I wanted to make sure you guys had a lot of reading this
Yes.
last week.
Intro to the comp plan.
Is that next, moving to new business,
We are
number 7?
moving to new business.
Okay, so I'm gonna make this quick for you because I just wanted to give you guys some references. I didn't give you Imagine Lincoln City again, but I will be going through this with Anne Marie and looking through the appendices. I think that if you get a chance to review all of the appendices in this, this is gonna be a huge jump board to get us towards where should we be with our comprehensive plan. This is the most recent public input we've received beyond the design review standards. And so I think that that's really a good start to that. If anyone wants a printed copy, let me know and I can get you one. Okay?
Do we have any word on when we're gonna hear back from the design standards?
I'll do that under reports and comments, yeah. So then, you received 3 items today in your packet for the comprehensive plan. One was just a quick little summary of what is a comprehensive plan, how do they get used, you know, how can you create them. The other was a report that, I love the freedom. Really some of the best practices for comprehensive plans and establishing and building them. The appendices again in here are short, a little more short and succinct, and give some really manageable goals on how to do process, how to do the public outreach, how to make sure, and then even to score our own plan if we wanted to on how it's either working or not working right now. This is drafted with a national and maybe even an international view. It comes from the American Planning Association. So not all of it is specific to where we're at in Oregon, but it is good general information on how municipalities are doing their comprehensive planning in the 21st century. The last thing I gave you was a periodic review. This is actually from the state of Oregon, and it references a lot of the state laws as well as their how to do some of the tasks and how to consider it. This is more drafted for a planner, but I wanted to share it with you so that you guys understood what my brain goes through as we're completing these things. Another resource that is on the state is the statewide planning goals and guidelines. Now, I didn't put this in your packet, but it is available on the public www.oregon.gov/LCD. It has some plain discussion about all of the 19 goals and guidelines for the state of Oregon and really where we need to focus, take this big stuff and kind of fine tune it down into how are we going to meet and improve our approach to the Oregon statewide planning goals. I am hoping to have a meeting with both Kate and Anne Marie in the next week or two to talk about public outreach and engagement and kind of brainstorm some ideas, identify what worked well with Imagine Lincoln City and the design standards and what didn't work so well. And really try to figure out how we engage our citizens, and it's going to be maybe a little difficult during summer, but how do we engage them for their full participation and really utilize some of these best practices that are in the planning assistant report. So I want to hear ideas from you guys. I also want to know that you've had the opportunity to review some of the materials and let it seep and digest in your brain as you think and talk with your friends and kind of think about how the Planning Commission should move forward with this. But that was really the staff presentation on this. I know you spent a lot of time reading everything, but it really was just to get some things flowing. And if you want to speak of any of the highlights or favorites or something you really took away that you enjoyed, I guess now would be the time.
Okay. First of all, thank you for pulling these documents together. I'm basically a rule follower, so I read them. And I sort of think of the comprehensive plan as really the true visioning document for the city. I think our visioning process, there's some value to what came out of it, but in terms of sort of overarching goals and framework and practices, I think that's the work that we need to do for the comp plan. I think it's probably been a while since our comp plan has been updated and
comprehensively.
Yes,
as in the full plan got
bits
redone.
and pieces, and so I'm a little curious about how consistency flows through it as it currently sits. I suspect not particularly well. And also the consistency with our current zoning and ordinances, because it feels to me like we've done a lot of little piecemeal changes that need to go back. We need to circle back through the document and make sure that's there. There are some sexy topics that probably weren't considered important when that plan was originally put together, like sustainability and recycling and energy efficiency and climate change and adaptability, those types of things that I think, should be driving what we're doing, and also protection of the environment that makes Lincoln City what Lincoln City is. So the whole concept of forest to the sea. I guess my question for you is, it would be nice to know what gaps you see in the existing plan. If you, I assume you haven't applied the scoring criteria, but that might be an interesting exercise to do to the existing plan. And then, how much out of that, I guess, would flow, how much of a revision you think is really necessary and what we can focus on. I'm very much interested in the public involvement aspect of it. I think that's critical to a durable plan and a plan that the public can get behind. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to sit down and chat. To the extent I can be involved in that, I would appreciate it. So those are sort of my thoughts. Anybody else? Thoughts?
How big is this plan, the comprehensive plan as it stands right now?
It's about 300 pages of PDF. Now, it hasn't
I haven't read it, obviously.
It hasn't been
Updated in 20 years?
updated in 35 years.
Richard said it was before his time, so.
It hasn't, it's written in typewriter. I have to retype it. Now, there's been updates to the comp plan,
Like the
but
transportation
but
plan would be
here-
an update.
that got added to
Yeah, the
it.
parks plan.
Yeah,
There's
so
a lot
we've,
of things that have been.
and I think I came in February and brought you a large list of every ordinance that's
Right.
amended it. But we actually haven't sat down with a typewriter and retyped it every time it gets amended. So this will be a new format. We're bringing it into the digital age. It's going to make it a living document so that if we have amendments on an annual or biannual or every few years, that someone can go in and edit it and have the final document, and we don't need to keep attaching and attaching and attaching to it.
I'd have to say that I agree with our chairman on the fact that this is our vision statement. I mean, honestly, it's a comprehensive plan, and if we've got the pieces that we should have in it up to date, it should be the tool that everybody uses to say, and where do we go here, and where do we go here? So I think putting the time into it, unfortunately, that big, I didn't realize typewriter. It's going to take a lot of time. I don't see how this is not going to take a lot of I'm like,
This is scheduled, and it's idealistic that I think that because so much good work has been done with the active transportation plan, the parks plans, and a lot of things over the last few years alone, it may not take as long as we think. I have provided council with a work plan that I think put it in front of them about February of next year. So it gives us 2 or 3 heavy months of early public outreach, and then, really, going from the high level to the, mid-level to, okay, now we really need to get into the weeds on some things and determine which direction we go. And then who knows what happens after it comes out of here, but try to at least get it to them by February.
To some extent, you have pieces you can staple together, is what I'm hearing.
There are some digital documents I can glue together, and yes, no, I'm not retyping all 300 pages.
No, I'm just trying to think, because there's a lot of stuff that 35 years ago, probably, who cares what they said 35 years ago versus now.
The best
it's like a
available
rewrite.
science and knowledge has changed quite a bit.
And the community has changed quite a bit, and that's why I'm concerned that I think the general plan was good in the Nelscott Gap and growing up the hill out of the tsunami zone. But there's a definite problem in this community, which Newport doesn't have, and that is the single 101 highway that connects the south end to the north end. And that has to be rectified for the benefit of
Everybody.
casual growth here.
Yeah.
I'm not,
And I believe that they were looking at that in the transportation plan a couple of years ago, but I'll make sure that, you know, what we've integrated in there is we can integrate what, you know, we're not gonna lose anything of the good work that was done. It's not a change of anything that's happened over the last 5 or 6 years other than maybe adding to it.
And when we did the Imagine Lincoln City project, we saw both tourist input as well as residents input. And I think going forward with the comprehensive plan, I would like to see us really focus on making sure that we're getting feedback from residents of Lincoln City as primarily, yeah.
Based upon being a tourism-based economy, I'm not sure.
Well,
It's hard because if
we have the tourism data in Imagine Lincoln City, and so we have that available to us already. I think that's a mix.
Okay.
I think I don't want the tourist input to outweigh by chance input we get from community residents.
What about property owners that are in the city
They're part of the game.
that don't live?
They're part of the game.
So real property owners, real business owners, that kind of
And
stuff.
stakeholders.
Residents.
Yeah.
As stakeholders. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, that's fair.
And the business community, of course.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on the reading material?
Well, there's executive summaries, and feel free to flip through and call me if anything comes up.
Is that one document available in printed form, that one?
Well, we can print it for you.
Okay, right.
Do you want my copy?
No,
Give my secret notes.
I would like a copy if you could make one up and fix that by tomorrow.
Fire, the tree burn or something.
Right. I'll just take it out of the environmental chapter.
Lindsay, I'd also like a copy of the,
Did you get a packet from Kate?
I got that, that's not the packet, I'm talking about the plan.
Oh, you don't have a copy of
one.
Imagine
No.
Lincoln City?
No,
Okay.
I do not. I would like to have one.
I think Gary needs one of those too.
Free time.
So
You have Imagine
Planning on
Lincoln
a
City?
vacation for the next 6 months.
you have a copy of this?
Yeah.
It's online.
It is online,
It is
yeah.
online, yeah. Right. You want a copy of it?
No.
Okay.
Okay. But the report. Okay, Marie, and then who else said they needed a copy of the PAS report? What,
Gary.
Miles and Gary?
I mean, which one is
Do you want a copy of that?
No, I'm sorry. The one that says. Okay.
I'd like that.
Okay,
Okay.
moving forward, I do have, go ahead. Oh, I actually have something to talk about on both 8 and 9.
Okay, well, let's go to 8. Planning Commission training.
So I have this wonderful book in my library called The Citizens Planning Series, The Planning Commissioner's Guide. I wanted to buy all of you one of them, but they go for $40 a piece. Must be your textbook.
Yeah, what is that?
It was printed in 2013, and it talks about the roles and responsibilities of the commissioner, talking about long-range development review, staff roles, council, the role in planning, ethics, decision-making principles. So I just wanted to let you know that I have it, and I'm willing to check it out to you, but only one person at a time, and the second person has to hound the first person so that I'm not involved in it. So if anybody wants to borrow this, I do have it. It is a really good resource. As you can see, I think that
Got pictures?
they probably want, yes, there are pictures. Yeah, I think there's only about 120 pages, so I don't know what the how much that costs per page, but it's just a good reference. It was something I really enjoyed reading through, and I think it's helpful if you guys have additional time or like to read. Not a requirement. I'm not going to assign it. The next thing is reports and comments.
Yeah.
Sean asked a really great question about the design standards and where those are at. I finally got all of my red line comments to the consultants in regards to the first review and their first draft. They are working on code edits to respond to those, and we're hoping to go, the next step in the process is to go out for public input on a final draft. So it's my intent to bring any final draft language to the Planning Commission for a glance before we put it out on the public webpage and get that kind of review. As you may be aware, City Council also assigned that the sign code gets updated this year with the lens of aesthetics. And so I'm considering utilizing the design review, retooling the design review technical advisory committee and adding some local businesses and hoping to gain some of their experience doing the design standards in moving on to signs. And so I will be sending an email out to those members of the design review committee that have been patiently waiting for a few months on things. I know that the last meeting was in November, December, I believe.
Felt like last summer, it's been so long.
And so, yeah, now that we have Anne Marie on board, a lot more can be getting done. I'm really excited. It's been a rough couple months. So, yeah, we're moving forward on getting caught up on that, and hopefully public hearings will be in front of you guys in the summer and getting those drafted, assuming that the consultants do a good job of taking into context the input they received.
Okay, great. Any other reports, comments? Anyone?
Move.
Okay, future agenda items in next meeting.
As a reminder, our April 16th meeting is canceled. You get an extra Tuesday at home. The doors will likely be locked, so no need to show up a half an hour early.
Did you mention last time that there was someone that had applied?
Yes.
Someone has applied?
Someone has applied, and is that on the April 8th council agenda? I haven't seen
No,
it.
I hope it is. No, it isn't.
It's not.
I don't think so.
So city council will be doing their interview, and I'll push that we get that sooner than later so that we can, especially before we start some of these larger projects with science and comp plan. I think it'd be really useful to get that
Throw them in on
person on there. Yeah. Start, go big or go home, right?
They get the book.
Yeah. No. Just for that.
That's right, you get the book.
He'll read it the fastest, I know that.
And he'll probably sit down all night long.
All right, any other?
I will take the book first unless someone else wants it.
You go ahead.
Go ahead, Miles.
Okay.
Steve, read it.
He's sitting on it though.
I don't need reading. I will read it in the next 2 weeks. And I'll
Okay.
bring it
Oh,
back.
you don't even have to read it that quick.
That's excellent.
He's been
It's
on
not
the clock.
that long.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Community order, anything, anyone? We're adjourned.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Yeah.
Very nice meeting all of you.
Sorry.
See you much more in the future.
Yes.
First meeting, everything you hoped for?
Yes,
And more.
and much more.
We didn't scare you away.
Oh.
I'll remember to take my computer home today.
Well, that's good. It was safely secured in my office. I knew.
And Marie, did you go by roll? I'm Marie. Everybody put their name tags back.
No, put your name
Name tags back. So
Second.
Tell me everything I need to know in questions.